When you have a child who comes out to you as transgender, it can be an emotional roller coaster to deal with. You can also feel like nobody in the world understands your situation. So says Dina Guarino of Cape Cod. In 2017, Dina's 23-year-old son shared with her that he was, in fact, a woman. Since that time, both Dina and her daughter, Robyn, have been on a journey of exploration and discovery, both individually and together. At times, that journey has been a difficult one for Dina, as she tells me in this interview. A parent who learns their child is transgender typically struggles with feelings of guilt, fear, anxiety, and sadness. For that reason, it often helps to find a support group like PFLAG, whose members understand what you're going through, she says. Still, as she reveals in this conversation, the love Dina feels for her child has never wavered since her daughter first came out to her on a crisp late autumn afternoon while the two were mowing the lawn together at Dina's Cape Cod home. Dina, it's great to be talking with you today about your experience as the parent of a transgendered child. And let me start by asking you, what would you like listeners to this podcast to get out of our time together today, our conversation?
I think that I would like them just to listen to their children and know that their children are who they are and that we have to respect them and love them as their parents, and that this isn't something that they chose. This is something that they are.
And can you talk a little bit about what the experience, the journey of this has been like for you? When did you first determine or learn that Robyn was transgender?
Robyn told me that she was transgender in November of 2017, but about a year prior to that, I had some indications of different things happening in her life as she was, into her 20s. As a young child, I noticed some differences, but didn't actually know what I was noticing. But I found out in November of 2017, she told me herself, and it confirmed things that I had felt. I had probably known for a longer time than that. And my journey, it's like a roller coaster. Some days you have really, really great days and everything's fine, as in life. And some days it's harder. Sometimes you see that 20-something-year-old boy and you remember your child, and you can't help that. That's just the way that life is. But then you realize how much happier Robyn is, how much more comfortable she is in her own skin, and how she is the same person. She's a person that you love. She's the person that you raised. She's the person that she always was. And, and she's chosen to be true to who herself. So you have to respect that.
When you think about other parents who discover, are told by their children that they're transgender, what have been the biggest challenges for you and your family in terms of coming to grips with this?
You know, it's a sad thing to say, honestly, that you actually worry about what other people think of you. You think, did I do something to cause this? Did I do something when I was, pregnant? Did I do something different? And you always think that, it's you blame yourself and you think, what are other people going to think about you? And then you just get to the point that you don't care. You just want everyone to be who they are and be happy. And I think that that was the biggest challenge. And it is with a lot of parents that we view it as we did something wrong. And that was, I met a mother of a transgender son. And she said to me when I first told her, a friend of mine that we had known, and she told me that her child was transgender. And I told her that mine was, she goes, it was nothing that we did. And I hadn't really thought about it, but I guess you do think about it in the back of your mind. You think, you know, not only did I do something, but could I have seen this sooner to help Robyn along when she was in her teens? If I helped her, maybe things would be easier for her throughout high school and, college, and not have to, feel this turmoil from within. And if I had just approached it more, but I honestly, I didn't know the signs to look for. She didn't know how she was feeling. She didn't, she was just confused in everything that she felt.
I know that you've said that growing up, there were some signs that she was different. Could you talk a little bit about what you observed and things that in retrospect seem to make sense in terms of where things are today?
Yeah, I was actually talking about this earlier today. When she was like 3 years old, she really got in kids' faces and didn't give any space. And she was always had to, she had some anxieties and she was nervous and wanted kids to like her. And it was just like an odd behavior in her way. And then 6, 7 years old, really was fascinated with American Girl dolls. And, I questioned that. And it was more the history of it. And she has a younger sister, and they had a whole world of dolls between the two of them with names to these dolls and their whole life. They had this all this imagination. It was wonderful to watch. And then I said, I just questioned it, and I don't know why I did. And then seeing things, clothing of her sisters in her room and different things. And I didn't really know. I didn't know. I didn't know what to make of it. So I didn't approach it. It wasn't until she was into her 20s and I thought something was different. And I asked her, I said, "Are you transgender?" And she said no. And then a year later, she said yes. So I did question it, and she was still dealing with her own emotions and her own, she was nervous. She was anxious. She didn't know how people would accept her. When she did tell me, she said, "Mom, if this makes you uncomfortable, I won't do anything," which breaks your heart because you don't want that. You just want them to be happy and you want them to be true to themselves and you want them to be who they are.
I know you said a moment ago, I'm struck by the fact that there was a point in time at which she didn't really know what was going on inside her, and you didn't know what was going on inside her either. And there wasn't the vocabulary, it sounds like, because she was still discovering who she was. So it was hard for her to give you insight into what was happening.
It was, if you ask her, when did you first feel something was different? She'll tell you when she was about 10 years old, she realized that she liked more of her sister's things, her sister's clothing, things like that. And she told me this when she was 16 years old and she was in a driver's ed class. There was a transgender youth in that class, and people were talking about her and said that she was transgender. And then Rob, she kind of thought to herself, yeah, that's what I feel like. And so she investigated it more, whether, it wasn't something she knew about or she was open to. She didn't know what was going on within her body. And then when she found out in driver's ed that this girl was transgender, she also thought to herself, that's how I feel. And then she learned more about it. And unfortunately, she didn't say anything at that age. And she waited. She was 23 when she told me. So, 7 years she suffered, not knowing what to do, what to say. And that's just difficult on every level.
I think it is. And I think for her, she needed to discover some things about herself in order to be able to talk with you about it. And I know you have been very embracing and very accepting of her throughout her life. Tell us the story about how she actually shared all of this with you. I think you said it was while you were mowing the lawn.
Yeah, she said to me, "Mom, I need to talk to you about something." And "Okay." She said, "When can I come down?" I said, "You want to come down Friday?" I said, "I have to mow the lawn. We can do it together." She said, "Okay." So agreeing to mow the lawn, I knew something was up because she doesn't like to do that. So as I mow the lawn and we're putting the grass in the bags, she said to me, "I am transgender. When you asked me, I am transgender." And I said, "Okay." I said, you know, "What does that mean? What are we going to do?" And my first question was, "Are you going to change your name?" And we just went back and forth. And how do you feel about this? And if you don't want me to do this, I won't do this. And I just remember it was like a brisk fall day and we were outside and we were going back and forth. And it was just kind of like, almost a sense of relief that I felt that she finally was able to just to tell me, that she was. And I saw the relief in her face, and I just wanted her to be happy with who she is and comfortable in herself. She always suffered from anxiety, and that all makes sense now. You're anxious because you want to just tell someone something. You want to be who you are. You don't want to pretend. And you're so anxious because you don't know who's going to think what. When in actuality, we love the person, and the person is who she is. And that's all that matters.
Hmm. And you're a nurse, and you deal with a wide variety of clients and patients in the office. And if we think about the topic of sexuality, it's so complex and complicated and multi-layered. And I'm kind of curious, what's been your takeaway, I guess, from dealing with this experience in terms of the nature and complexity of human sexuality and gender identity?
Well, that's a complex situation. The question in itself. Everyone is who they are, and we have to accept them for who they are, and they don't choose it. And as long as people are good people, I want them to be able to express themselves. And we had another young boy that came to us and stated that he was transgender, and then came back and said that he wasn't. So I think that his family had something to do with that. And that breaks your heart, because no one should stop someone from being who they are. So I've seen people in a whole different light. You accept them more for, who they are. It sounds like I'm a broken record. I keep saying the same thing, but that's what it is. It's like, you can't control how you feel. You can't control who you are. You have to embrace it, and you have to accept it. And you have to honestly not worry about what other people are going to think about it.
And the family relationships here can be really critical. So Robyn had you. Can
Mm-hmm.
you talk a little bit about the challenges or what was involved in her navigating other relationships in the family?
Well, the first person to find out in our family was her younger sister, and that honestly did not go well. And my advice to any parents out there is that let your transgender child do the talking. I did the talking on that front, and I think I shouldn't have been there. I felt like this wasn't my story to tell at that moment. Or if I'm going to tell somebody, maybe Robyn shouldn't have been there, because me telling the story with the person I'm telling the story about sitting next to me was a very weird dynamic. And her younger sister didn't take it well at first. She's much better now, but it came to her as a surprise, and she kind of reacted differently, like, oh, great, this is great. Then we can be sisters. And she was just, it was a weird reaction on her part. And she had to go through her process, and she was kind of put on the spot. And I think that when siblings are involved, that the parent kind of needs to be, in my situation, it's not right for everybody. Everyone's different. But in my situation, I think had I not been there, they would have been able to open up more. Because when Robyn told my mother, her grandmother, who lived with us for 14 years and helped raise her, she said to me, I'm going to go tell Nunny today. And I said, okay. And I said, what do you feel that how is Nunny going to react? And she goes, Nunny's going to be fine, because Nunny loves me. And she was right. She was
Mm-hmm.
absolutely right. And that it's been different. And she wanted me to tell people. She's like, you can tell uncle, you can tell, auntie, you can tell this one, you can tell that one. But she was never there when I told those people. It was only with her sister that she was there. And that made it a little bit more challenging.
Hmm. And as you describe this, it occurs to me that there's a process of acceptance and understanding involved here. And what's your advice to families that are dealing with this about what to expect in terms of their own reactions in some cases when they learn this kind of news?
Well, you have to be open and honest with your child. Robyn said to me, I understand if you're going to, get the pronouns mixed up. I understand the name mix up. I understand these things. And just when you say it, if you do something, say, I'm sorry. It was 23 years of one way of saying things, and now it's different. You have to, as a family, be open, and you have to be on the same page with everything and not get your feelings so hurt. It's a lot of give and take, and you really have to just know that nothing that I've said I'm doing intentionally. If I say things wrong, or, I've said a lot of things wrong, and I say, I love you, and I don't mean to say these things wrong. I get caught up in different things, or you worry about how you're going to say something, and then you still mess it up because you're so hard not to say it wrong that you do. So I think that as a family, you need to be open with one another. And if my brother will say he, I say she. I just correct him. I don't make a big deal out of it. And he nods his head yes, and then goes on, because some people have a harder time and you don't want to make a big deal out of it, but you do want to just reiterate. And I know that one of the members in PFLAG at a last meeting said to the whole group that their parent acknowledged them as their son for the first time, and how much that meant. So that's what I'm trying to do now. For me to say, it was very hard for me to say my daughter. I could say Robyn, I could say she, but now knowing that person from that meeting told me that, I realized how important it was to him, and that you learn from that. The meetings have helped me, hear from the other transgenders what it means when parents do certain things.
And you mentioned PFLAG, and let's talk a little bit about that. When did you discover PFLAG, and how has it been helpful to you in taking this journey?
So back in November of 2017, when I found out that Robyn was transgender, at the time, their dad had passed away the year before, and I was seeing a therapist to help me deal with how to deal with his death with the kids. And I found out that Rob was transgender. And the therapist said right out, I don't deal with parents of transgender kids. I'm not an expert in that. And I said, well, I didn't expect you to be. I'm just asking you questions. And so I realized at that point that I needed to talk to somebody, because there's all different things in life that you need just that outside perspective, okay,
Yes.
tell me, how can you help me deal with this? Am I doing this right? Or there's really no right or wrong answer to do anything. So I said, well, what can I do? So in November, when I found out, I was somewhat alone. My younger daughter didn't take it well. My significant other took it very well, and he was very, very supportive. And I said, what can I do? My two coworkers helped me, because Robyn came here and they knew, and they helped me. And actually, one of my coworkers looked up online and she found PFLAG. And I do go to Arizona in the winter. So I was going to Arizona that winter, and I left in January and I came back in May. And I was kind of away from it. Robyn wasn't with me. So I was kind of in my own little bubble for those 4 or 5 months. And I didn't talk to anybody about anything. I just kind of processed it myself. And when I came back, I realized I'm back to reality, and I need some support. And, my significant other is like, oh, it is what it is. And, she's a great person, and don't worry about it. And she'll tell people when she wants to. And I'm like, I need help. I need
Yes.
a parent to tell me who's been through this. So I looked up PFLAG. I went to my first meeting. And Robyn, in the meantime, had told my mother. So my mother knew for about 3 days. And I said, listen, there's this group. It's called PFLAG. And there's a meeting in Brewster, and do you want to go? It's Monday night. She said yes. Well, it was when you announced the scholarships, and it was
Ah.
and it was a packed house. And at first, I was like, "Is this the right room?" And I met some wonderful people. And when it got to me, I was so overwhelmed. I was hysterically crying. And I didn't know what to do. And everyone just stared at me, and their faces were they were so kind, their expressions. And then I took a deep breath, and I said, wow, someone to my right of me put their hand on my leg. My mother was to the left of me. And the warmth that I felt immediately, and after the meeting, the people that came up to me and offered services and pamphlets, and I went to coffee with one mother, and I don't know. It was the best experience I could have ever wished for.
You realized you're not alone, and you found a community of kindred spirits, and I think it's wonderful that PFLAG has been able to provide that kind of service and support that is so necessary. And it seems to me that the journey you're on as the parent of a transgender child is It must be on almost a daily basis enriching and illuminating. Fair to say?
Fair to say, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I think one thing that it would be interesting for us to talk a little bit about here is the fact that I think one of the concerns that a lot of parents of lesbians and gays and transgender and binary, non-binary folks have, one of the big concerns is, oh my gosh, if they come out, how is the world going to treat them? And what about work? What about career? And I'm struck by the fact that your daughter is a successful lawyer and has a career and has interests and activities. Talk a little bit about that, and what is your advice, I guess, to parents who may think, well, my child is going to come out or going to pursue this path, and I'm worried for their future.
Well, this is something that we didn't talk about before, but when Rob first came to me, she was in law school, and I said, finish law school as who you are right now, and then get a job, and then transition, because I think that will be easier. And I was completely wrong. And you don't know.
Mm,
I was
mm.
absolutely 100. She's like, no, I want to graduate, who I am, true to myself, and I want to change now. And I was like, why? Why now? You've waited, just wait. And, so I wasn't mentally in the same space as her. And then I got there, and she was the strong one. And she came through as like, no, I'm going to do this. I've told you, you're the most important person. You accept me, you love me. And now I don't really care what anybody else thinks about me, but you. I wanted you to accept me, and you do. So that's it. And I'm going to be who I am, and I'm going to change it now. And that's what she did. She's so strong about that. She did everything on her own in law school, knowing the process of changing her name, doing everything. She graduated her undergrad from Boston University, and she went and got herself a diploma with her new name on it, like after law school, and because law school diploma had her new name. So she did all of this. It when you know who you are and you're comfortable with that, the sky's the limit, and she proved that.
Clearly, she's done very well, and as we wrap up here, I'm thinking that your experience, again, it's one that changes day by day. You spoke earlier about the roller coaster of feelings,
Yep.
and can you talk just a little bit more about that and what any parent in your situation probably needs to anticipate, wants to prepare for, and be mindful of?
Well, that's what it is. Some days you can say, okay, I can't control anything. I have to let things be who they are. I have to, if your siblings aren't getting along, if your kids aren't getting along as siblings, you have to let them work it out. You can't control all of these things, so you have to let it be. There's days that I'm like, okay, this is, and then there's days that you're sad, that you say, okay, I didn't expect this. This wasn't what I envisioned. But then again, that's life. You can't envision one year to the next what's going to happen in anything in our whole world. We didn't envision this pandemic happening this year. So we have to take it one day at a time, 1 hour at a time sometimes, and you can go up and you can go down. And I think that as long as you keep the lines of communication open and you just let them know that you love them and that you support them, and you're going to be there in good times and in bad, that anything is possible, and that that this too shall pass. With the way that you feel, I found a lot of support. I have a couple of mothers of transgender kids that I reach out to, and I'm like, hey, how are you doing? I had a rough day. And they're right there with you. They know that one person saying one
Mm,
thing can set you off. People don't understand. Someone you can think that's a good friend of yours will say something, and you just have to say, they don't understand. I can't let this affect me. You just have to let a lot of things go and know that sometimes you just can't change how other people think, and you just know how you think, and that's it.
yeah. And I'm certain that you are a resource to other parents who are going through this. And my last question is this. We've talked about PFLAG's benefits in terms of providing support to the parents of transgender children, transgender youth. Where would you advise a person who thinks they might be transgender to go for support?
Well, I've only had I've only done PFLAG. I've only had luck with PFLAG. I think if they want to, there's a lot of transgender groups. Robyn has not got involved in many of those. She's just in the PFLAG group. But I hear through the PFLAG group about all these different resources, and there are a lot of things on their website for different transgender youth to go to. I think that when you know that you're not alone in life with anything, that there's people that are just like you out there and that you can go talk to them. I think that that's the best thing. And then maybe just a therapist in private, private therapy sessions where you can talk, I think is helpful. But I found great, I said this before, is support with parents of transgender, but transgender women also. There's just a difference. If you have a transgender son versus a transgender daughter, I think dealing with the parents, specifically for your transgender is more helpful for me because they actually, I don't know, it's more helpful for me that way.
Dina, I want to thank you for taking time today to talk to me. Is there anything I have not asked you that is top of mind for you on this topic that you'd like to conclude with?
No, I think that we covered about everything, Rick. Thank you for having me. It was great to do this, and I just hope that the parents out there know that they're not alone, that there's support, that PFLAG is a great organization that is very open and kind, and it's just been a great support system for me.
That's great to hear, and thanks again for taking part today. Thank you for listening to today's interview. Founded in 1973, PFLAG is the first and largest organization for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people and their parents, families, friends, and allies. We have over 400 chapters and more than 200,000 members and supporters nationwide. Our members come from every generation and live in cities, small towns, and rural areas across the United States. PFLAG is committed to creating a world where diversity is celebrated and all people are respected, valued, and affirmed. For more information about PFLAG, explore the rest of this website or visit PFLAG National at pflag.org.